Hello, PentaxTips here, and we have an Asahiflex II for this overview training video. This stunning camera comes to us from 1955 and was the fourth camera body that Asahi Optical Company ever made. The Asahiflex series are a single lens reflex camera with a max shutter speed of 1/500th of a second and have a neat pop-up waist level through the lens viewfinder in addition to a rudimentary eye level finder. The waist level viewfinder is absolutely gorgeous. I love using it and seeing that lovely 3D pop come at me. However, there may be a learning curve for framing your subject because with a waist level finder, your image rendering through the finder is reversed. Asahi had just recently innovated upon the single lens reflex with the instant return mirror included on the model just previous to this one. This technology was a paradigm shift in the photography world and re-envisioned the standard quintessential camera away from the like-alike rangefinder designs and more towards the single lens reflex designs. Rangefinders use a parallax system for focus that caused you to view a scene slightly separate from that of the one of the lens taking your image. However, previous single lens reflex camera mirrors had to be manually moved out of the way to take a picture. The Asahiflex with its instant return mirror were a smash hit, allowing one to focus their scene using the same lens that was taking your picture. This Asahiflex model improved upon the previous model by not only containing that fancy instant return mirror and flash sync ports, but also contained a second shutter speed knob to access longer set exposures down to half a second. An important thing to know about this camera is that there's no internal light meter. You must use an external light meter, or like this one on your smartphone app. Viewing from the front of the camera, we have the Asahiflex branding across the top of the mirror box. We have metal strap lugs on each side of the camera, flash port terminals on one side, and a slow shutter speed dial on the other. This front panel shutter dial has 4 stops between a half second and 1/25th of a second. There is also a stop with the letter T. T allows for long exposure photography where the shutter will stay open upon pressing the shutter. Even when you stop pressing the release, the shutter will remain open. To stop taking a long exposure image, rotate the secondary knob off from the T toward the half second and the shutter and mirror will click back down. For reference, this dial is only activated when the main shutter dial up top is set to the 1/25th of a second position. For a lens mount, the Asahiflex use a unique screw mount called M37, the original Takumar lenses. As a side note, there were only 6 types of M37 mount Takumar lenses ever made. This screw thread was smaller yet than the Leica M39 and the Praktica M42 screw mounts. However, there are apparently first-party, but more commonly and available third-party adapters to mount these M37 lenses onto an M42 screw mount, which can then be adapted to a K-mount and can be used on all modern Pentax digital cameras. You'll notice these M37 Takumars have a preset aperture dial set on the front of the lens. The back of the camera simply consists of the camera film backdoor, and you can also peer into the very basic eye-level finder. This finder is disconnected from the waist-level finder, and therefore isn't influenced by the focus of your lens. However, it is provided for when you want to take snapshots, or shooting a moving subject, for when the reversed image of the waist-level operation proves too difficult. The bottom of the camera contains our regular tripod screw mount and our film advance and rewind switch. This model has a made in Japan engraving in the corner. Starting on the top panel, on the right side, we have our film advance knob. Crank down on this guy to advance your film to the next frame. Along the base of the film advance knob is a manual frame counter dial. You'd have to remember to manually rotate that dial after each shot, using this arrow to indicate the shot count. Of course, next we have our shutter release button. Next over we have our primary shutter speed dial with 5 stops between 1/25th of a second and the max shutter of 1/500th of a second. We also have a B for bulb mode, and that will keep the shutter open for as long as you have the shutter button pressed down. You can also see we have a couple suffixes. The 1/50th of a second has the X indicating the flash sync speed. Sure to have your shutter speed set on this speed if you're using an external flash. In addition, the 1/25th speed has a 2 afterward, informing us that this speed needs to be selected in order to access our secondary shutter speed dial. Now, from the left, we have a camera back release latch, our film rewind knob, and again our eye level finder with the engraved camera serial number. In the middle, we have our waist level finder with the Asahi Optical Company logo. There's this little nib on the back cover that you can pull up on to pop open the spring-loaded viewfinder hood. Now you can frame and shoot from waist level operations. For extremely fine focus precision, you can choose to pop open the additional magnifying lens. There's another little nib on the inside of the back panel, and you can use that to swing open the lens. To use this magnifier, make sure your eye is right up close to the magnifier. Press the magnifier nib to fold it back down flush to the panel. To close the hood, press the back panel down first, followed by the left and right panels. Hold these spring-loaded panels down while you close the lid and it snaps locked. To load film into the camera, first, before you forget, set the ISO dial on your external light meter to that of the film speed that you're loading into the camera. Also, ensure the switch on the bottom of the camera is set to advance. Next, push up on the camera back release latch claw thing here and it will release the back door. Next, pull the rewind knob up 2 positions. Now you can insert the film cartridge and push the rewind knob back down, fully back into the film cartridge. Take the film leader and pull the film across the guide rails and place the leader firmly into the slot of the take-up reel. Now you can advance your film and release the shutter until the take-up sprockets engage with the film perforations. You can now close the door and the camera back pressure plates will hold the film flat to the image plane. Now, you should advance the film and release the shutter 2 more times. This is done to move the current frame past the film exposed while you were loading the camera. Also, you can tell your film is loaded correctly by the rewind knob rotating counterclockwise while you advance to the next frame. Remember to now manually set your frame counter back to 0. Taking a shot with any camera from the 1950s is going to be quite a manual little process. Ensure the rewind switch on the bottom of your Asahiflex is set to the advanced position. Turn the film advance knob until tension is felt and the knob stops turning. As you rotate the film advance, the shutter dial co-rotates into position. Next, meter your scene with an external light meter. Preset your lens aperture to your light meter readings using the outer aperture ring. Rotate the ring until the selected aperture is matched with the indicator dot. Ensure the inner aperture ring is set to the widest aperture. Next, set your shutter speed. Remember, you have to have your film advanced already, as the co-rotating shutter dial will only match a shutter speed to the indicator arrow once the film has been advanced. If your shutter speed indicated by the light meter is greater than 1/25th of a second, just use the top primary shutter dial. We can change the selected shutter speed by gripping the sides of the dial and lifting upward. You can now rotate the dial to the required shutter speed. If your exposure meter readings require a shutter speed slower than 1/25th of a second, rotate the primary shutter dial to the 1/25th second position, and that activates the secondary front panel dial. You can now select these slower shutter speeds to acquire the correct exposure. Next step is framing your scene and manually focusing. Again, you can do this in 3 sorts of ways. 1, by simply looking down through the waist level finder. Or 2, if you want to use the magnifying glass, make sure your eye is right up to that magnifying glass. Or 3, through the eye level finder. You can also use the focus and aperture scales on the lens to assist with achieving good focus. Once you've achieved your desired focus and framing, you need to stop down your aperture. Turn the inner aperture ring down to the indicated preset aperture. Now you're ready to press the shutter button. Snap! You've just taken your first picture. Be sure to manually advance your frame count indicator and reopen your aperture for your next shot. When you get to the end of the film roll, you'll feel the film advance knob pull taut, indicating you've reached the end of the roll. Flip the switch on the bottom of the camera to the rewind position. Take the film rewind knob and pull up to the first position. You can now crank that knob clockwise. winding the film back into the canister. You can feel the tension and hear the film being loaded back into the canister, and that tension will release when you have completed rewinding all the film. Now you can push up that side claw latch to release the door, pull the rewind knob up all the way to release the film canister, and extract your film. Now close that back door and remember to reset your frame counter back to 0, ready for your next roll. Thank you for joining us on this Asahiflex overview training. If you like this content and you want to see more like it, please like and subscribe. Thanks.